This is the Chassidic Story Project with Barak Hullman, podcasting from Jerusalem, Israel. You'll never know, you'll never know, you'll never know, you'll never know. In 1938-1939, Poland was already a living hell for the Jews. People were desperate to get out of the country. And really the only safe way out of Poland was to have a false passport. Of course, there are always some industrious Jews, and there was a group of Jews who got together, and they learned how to forge passports. But passports have a certain style, and a particular system of numbers. Unless you do it exactly right, people will get caught. And in Poland at that time, if you were caught, it meant certain death. So what the Jews really needed were piles of old passports from as many different countries as they could collect. Using these old passports, they were able to study the form and the systems, and then make copies of new ones. This is a story about the uncle of an Alexander Chassid, who was part of an underground group that was assigned to buy, borrow, steal, do whatever they could to get a hold of these old passports. And one day, he had an unbelievable success. He collected over 150 passports from many different places. And he was so happy thinking about how many Jews he would be able to save with these passports. And as he was hurrying back to his headquarters with all the passports and a packet under his arm, he was stopped by the Polish police. "Jew," said the policeman, "give us your package and show us your identity papers." "But officer," the Jew replied, "really you're making a big mistake. I was just going home from work and—" "What, do you think we're stupid? Do you really think that we're that stupid? We know what you're doing, filthy liar. Now give us the package." And the policeman grabs the package out of the Jew's arm and rips it open. He says, well, what do we have here? I think we're going to take these. And as for you," and the Jew interrupts him, he says, "Please, I have a wife and children. Please let me go home and explain to them what happened. If I don't show up, they'll be frantic. Please, they'll think I'm dead." And the policeman says, "Yeah, you're going to be dead. If you don't tell us everything about your organization, where these passports came from, who's making them, we want to know all the names of your leaders, the addresses of your offices. We want to know everything. But you know what? For some reason, I'm feeling generous today. Okay, go home to your family. But you better show up first thing tomorrow morning." And then he gives him an address scribbled on a piece of paper. "And don't even think about running away, because we know who you are, and we know where you live. And it won't be just you that will suffer, also your family." The officer turned away, and the poor Yid immediately ran home, more terrified than he'd ever been in his life. He knew one thing for sure. If he showed up as he was supposed to, first thing in the morning at the police station, first they'd torture him, and then they'd shoot him. Because dealing in false passports, especially if you were a Jew, was a very serious offense. He also knew that if he tried to run away, the policeman's threat was real, and that he would come after his wife and children. And so he didn't know what to do. So what does a chassid do? When they don't know what to do, they go to their Rebbe. And this chassid, being a chassid of the Heiliger Alexander Rebbe, he went to his Rebbe for help. Now, the Heiliger Rebbe Yitzchak Menachem Mendel Danziger of Alexander was mamish, the holiest of the holy. His father passed away when he was still very young, and he was supposed to become the Rebbe, but he refused. He said, "I'm not fit to be a Rebbe. I'm really not. I'm not even old enough. And besides, I have very bad eyesight, and I won't be able to read the notes, the kvittelach that people give to me." But the Chassidim of his father said, "We don't care about all that. You're the only one we want. Please, you've got to be our Rebbe." And they begged him so much that finally one day he agreed. Rebbe Yitzchak, when he was already an older man, he told his son this story. And his son immediately asked his father, "So Tati, what happened? You don't ever seem to have any trouble reading people's kvittelach. How do you do it?" And the Heiliger Alexander answered, Gewalt. I want you to know that as soon as I became a Rebbe, Hashem opened all the gates for me. And not only could I see the kvittelach, I could see from one end of the world to the other." But do you know what the holiest thing about the Heiliger Alexander was? He already had passports for himself and his family that would get them out of Poland safely. And all of his friends and followers were begging him to use the passports and leave before it was too late. But he refused to go. He said, "How could I do such a thing? I've given my whole life to the Jewish people here in Poland. And if the end, God forbid, has to come, in my last moment, I want to be among them too." So, this Alexander Chassid, he came to the Rebbe. And he tells him the whole story about the passports. And he says, "Rebbe, please, you have to tell me what to do." And Rebbe Yitzchak, he closed his eyes, and he sat still for a moment. And then he looked at the Chassid, and he shook his head and he said, "My dearest friend, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to tell you. If you go tomorrow morning, you're right. The police will torture you and then kill you. And if you don't go, they'll kill both you and your family. And there's nothing I can do to help you. Oy vey, Oy vey. And then, suddenly, the Rebbe buries his head in his hands, and he starts crying from the deepest depths of his heart. He cries so hard that his whole body was trembling. And this went on for a long time, his body shaking more and more. The Chassid was getting worried. He ran to the holy Alexander's son and he said, "Please come fast, your father's crying so much. I'm worried he'll make himself sick or, God forbid, something worse." The Rebbe's son ran into the room and he goes to his father and he says, "Please, father, stop crying. I know how much you care, but it won't do the Chassid any good if you hurt yourself." But the Alexander just cried even harder. And then a few minutes later, he suddenly stopped crying and sat up. He looked at the Chassid and he said, "It's all right now. You can go to the police tomorrow morning. Nothing will happen to you because Hashem just opened all the gates of mercy." So the next morning, the Chassid, being a true Chassid, he went to the police station early the next morning. And who's the first person he sees when he gets to the door? The same exact officer who had stopped him on the street. But the man didn't seem to recognize him. "Can I help you?" the officer asks. For a moment, the Chassid didn't know what to say. And then he had an idea. I had some passports that I left here. I'm here to pick them up." "Your passports? Oh, of course, just a moment. Let me see, where did I put them? Oh yes, here they are." And he handed the Chassid his package full of passports. The Chassid thanked him and went on his way. And it was through his faith in the Rebbe and through his trust in Hashem that he was able to save the lives of thousands of Jews from the hands of the Nazis. To become a supporter of this podcast, please go to HasidicStory.com, HASIDIC story.com.